And a reminder that Monday is the last day for committee bill introductions. Seeing none today, we'll move on to the next item. Representative Poskin wanted to introduce somebody special.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and she is special. Addison Kropp, if you would stand up, is my intern for this year. She is a freshman at the University of Kansas, hails from Missouri, but made the right choice when it was up to her. And she is studying psychology and pre-law and is very interested in family law. So thank you for welcoming her today.
Excellent. Thanks for her introduction. And Addison, you got off easy. We made the other ones come up to the mic and do that themselves. So we might have to have you do that sometime. Then just the only update I have is that the report out for School for the Blind went well this morning. The committee accepted our recommendations and on every item. So we did well, and they did well, and that one. And then we had to adjourn, so we'll do School for the Deaf tomorrow morning. I bet I'll be the first one up, so prayers are accepted. With that, we have a full schedule today. With time for questions, I'm thinking about like a 4 to 5 minute presentation. I'm gonna set a little clock. I'm not gonna be too pushy on it. And then I think on FastBridge, since you're last and you're two different people, just kind of be mindful that you got 2 slots inside of that. And so just kind of work inside those parameters as a team. And if you want to learn more about FastBridge, we just had a excellent presentation in House Ed with Chair Estes. So there's more information to be had there. But we will get started with Chuck Knapp from JAG-K. And for everybody's attention, if you want to open up your S drive, all of their handouts are in your S drive. If you printed them, you're an overachiever. But they are there available for you. And the ones that have a presentation, we already know are in there. So, all right. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Chuck Knapp. I'm president and CEO of JAG-K, and I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. The reason JAG-K exists is we want all students to have successful futures. And we've been doing a good job of that since we started in 2013 with 25 programs. This year we have 120 programs across the state serving more than 6,600 students, including 922 students in our 12-month follow-up. So for those of you who don't know, part of our model is a 12-month follow-up support program for all of our graduating seniors. We have had amazing results with all of our classes, but the class of 2024 has done better than any class in the history of our organization. They had a 98% graduation rate, and 90% of those students, 12 months after they left our program, were either in post-secondary education, full-time military service, or in the workforce, full-time. Those are the types of outcomes we would like every Kansas student to have an opportunity for. We can do that if the committee would grant our request of $800,000 from the K-12 budget, and if the legislature would also increase our TANF grant to our FY19 levels. Obviously, today we're asking for the $800,000. We could expand by 10 more counties and serve, hopefully, at a minimum 7,400 students in fiscal year 2027. There's a lot of information in the written testimony about some of the new initiatives we have, but I appreciate the time. I would, with the chairman's indulgence, like to bring up one of our former students who can best talk about the impact of JAG-K. She also happens to be our marketing and communications specialist, Raya Klima.
Welcome to committee. If you'll just introduce yourself, and we'd love to hear your testimony.
Hi, so my name is Raya Klima. I am a graduate of the class of 2022 from Concordia High School, and I was in Jobs for America's Graduates Kansas for 6 years. I joined in 7th grade, and it really changed my trajectory as a whole. I am a first-gen college graduate. I don't think that I would have even made it to college if I had not been in JAG-K. I came into JAG-K in 7th grade, and when I came into JAG-K, I was suffering from trigeminal neuralgia, which is a chronic pain condition that affects the cranial nerves. Things like talking or eating or the wind blowing on my face would create excruciating pain, and I was missing a lot of school. So much so that they almost held me back in the 6th grade, and it was just a really big hindrance to my education, even though I loved school and I loved being in school. I loved learning, I loved everything that came with it. And because of the support that I got from JAG-K, I was able to succeed in staying caught up in my classes. I had the extra time that I needed to make up homework assignments. And I also just found a supportive group of people that were there for me to lean on when I was going through these tough times. I also was raised by a single mother. She remarried when I was a freshman in high school, but up until then, it was just my mom. And, you know, having an extra support system that I found in school was really helpful for me. I also know other students that have been affected by loss, whether it's losing both parents and ending up in foster care suddenly. We just see students that are helped immensely by this program because it helps us keep on track for our futures. And then I graduated and went to college, and then after college, I actually came back to work for JAG-K because JAG-K has left so much of an impact on me that I want to give back to what it has given me.
Excellent. Well, thank you for your testimony. Probably questions for both conferees on this, if we have any questions. Representative Estes.
My question is for Mr. Knapp, but what graduating class would have been the year I gave you guys tours in DC? Was she on the tour?
I was in DC, gosh, I went to DC multiple times. I went in 2022, I went in 2019 as well. I am not 100% sure.
I can't remember what I had for lunch, so.
You'd know if I gave you a crazy tour of the
It was
Capitol
a
for 3
two-hour
hours.
tour,
Yeah.
at least, of the Capitol, the best tour we've ever had, and so you would have remembered it.
Yeah, these students were amazing on the tour and their curiosity. Mr. Knapp, my real question for you, of the students, you listed 3 outcomes for your students, college, military, and workforce. Of your students in the workforce, do you know anything about how many have a post-secondary credential of any sort?
67% of our students have some type of post-secondary credential or are enrolled in post-secondary education. Our goal is 75%, so we're getting closer.
And do you know what academic level most of your students perform in? Are they level 1, 2, 3, 4?
As far as
For the standardized test and proficiency?
we are going to start tracking that in the upcoming school year. That's been a request of the legislature, and so we have middle school programs. We have 17 of them, so we're going to start tracking the middle school and the high school proficiency.
Because I suspect 67% may not be where you are, but where you want to be, but I suspect that you're higher than much higher than kids who are in level 1 or 2, and I think you probably spend a lot of your time in that direction. So I think you're getting some good results.
Mr. Chair, Representative, Madam Chair, our national organization's goal is 35%, so we're far exceeding our national organization's expectations.
Well done. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the question. My question is, could you give us just a little bit of a brief on which communities you're in, see kind of how our committee is impacted, and then where you would like to expand?
We have a list of districts for expansion, and that's determined by need, data, also timing, because pre-enrollment is starting next month for many school districts. We are literally across the state. We're in 43 counties currently. We're in Wichita, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, Norton, Goodland, Junction City. We have 85 schools, 92 middle or multi-year programs, so those are 9 through 12, 17 middle school that could start at 6th grade through 8th grade. We also have 7 programs for system-involved youth. We have 3 programs at the Kansas Juvenile Correctional Complex. Our goal is to keep students from going to the Kansas Juvenile Correctional Complex. And if you look at the data in your testimony on how we do with students in foster care, which are in great jeopardy of entering the corrections system. We had a 100% graduation rate for those students in foster care that were in a traditional JAG-K program last year. We had an 89% graduation rate for the students who are in our Success Academy program. So they're students who could not be in a traditional JAG-K program, but maybe they started in one and they were placed in a high school that didn't have JAG-K, but we continued to serve them with a career specialist that just moves around to support those students specifically.
Well, you got the wrong name tag in front of you for some reason, but nope, just slide it down a little bit. There we go. I know who you are. I just saw the wrong name in front of you, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, sir, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate my home district, Basehor Linwood, and this is my 5th year or 6th year going away from not being in the building. The JAG program was incredible. And every year they come up here and meet with us. I've got 2 kids that are now teachers and doing wonderful things and a great program. My one disappointment is that the JAG program is funded separately from teachers. And I've had a couple of really good JAG instructors, but they have to go on because they're not part of the regular salaried school district. And that's too bad because they deserve the retirement funds. And you have my support 100%. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I want to respect everyone's time and thank you so much, both of you, for joining us today. And we will consider your proposal. Appreciate it. Next, we have Ethan Sperling from Sparkwheel. Welcome to committee, sir.
Good afternoon. Chairman Getz and members of the committee, my name is Ethan Sperling, and I am the Vice President for Policy and Government Relations for Sparkwheel. I'm joined by my colleague Kelly Stanford, Chief Program Officer for Sparkwheel behind me. We appreciate the opportunity to be with the committee this afternoon and discuss the critical supports that Sparkwheel provides to students, families, and communities across the state of Kansas. Sparkwheel is proud to be the largest provider of integrated student support services in Kansas and throughout the Midwest. We currently operate in 40 Kansas schools, providing services from early childhood, elementary, middle, high school, and also now on the campus of Pittsburgh State University. Important to note also that our services don't stop at graduation. We continue to support students into their early years of adulthood. Today in Kansas, Sparkwheel serves more than 22,000 students, and that number continues to grow. Our footprint is really across the state, including communities like Dodge City, Garden City, Topeka, El Dorado, Uniontown, a nice geographic representation of communities across the state, primarily rural. Sparkwheel places dedicated staff inside schools, working alongside teachers, administrators, to identify those students with the greatest needs, and we connect them with and provide them with timely supports. Our student support coordinators focus in 8 core areas, and there's greater detail regarding these 8 core areas in the PowerPoint that we also provided, but those 8 core areas are attendance interventions, positive behavior supports, family engagement, academic readiness, future preparation, enrichment activities, life skills, and access to essential needs. So together, these services help improve attendance, strengthen academic outcomes. They allow educators and teachers to focus more time on classroom instruction. In addition to our student support coordinators, we have community support specialists and success coaches that extend the work even further by supporting students through post-secondary transitions and into early childhood, while also strengthening partnerships between schools, families, and community stakeholders. Sparkwheel's funding model is braided, combining both public and private investment. We have a development team that works closely with local partners, including United Ways, chambers of commerce, faith-based organizations, churches, and the business community, whose in-kind donations and financial support are essential to our stability and growth. We're also extremely grateful to have a very positive relationship with the Kansas Department for Children and Families and to receive a TANF grant from them. That's a critical part of our funding. Looking ahead, Sparkwheel has developed a strategic plan for growth in Kansas that builds on what we know to be the most effective and efficient model for impact, and we call that the feeder pattern. So essentially, this approach ensures that students have a continuous access to the Sparkwheel supports as they move throughout their journey as a student, as they move from elementary school through middle school into high school. And this feeder pattern helps create stability, trust, and long-term outcomes, which we are proud to measure. Our proposed expansion includes 12 additional student support coordinator positions to strengthen the feeder pattern. All participating school districts have expressed a strong interest in expanding Sparkwheel services, and reflecting both the demonstrated impact and the program and the unmet needs of the students and families across Kansas. On the second page of this testimony, at the top, we have a budget breakdown of the anticipated cost for those 12 new positions, those 12 new programs. We anticipate the cost of that expansion of these positions to be $1.37 million. This number is all-inclusive of the costs associated with the positions. It includes wages, taxes, benefits, program materials, program evaluation, technology, professional development. All costs associated with the positions are in those numbers. With the legislature's support, Sparkwheel could serve an additional 4,500 Kansas students by expanding services, and we've listed the communities in which we're asking for this support. Those communities are Dodge City, Garden City, Topeka, El Dorado, Emporia, Fort Scott, and Independence. Toward the bottom of the second page, we've got a chart which has additional information regarding the positions that I just described, the student support coordinator positions, which are the school-based positions, and then the community support specialist and success coach positions, which are post-education support positions. So that's my overview of the ask. We did also submit a PowerPoint presentation. It's lengthier than what I just went through, so we're of course happy to walk through that if there's time. If not, everybody should have it, and we're happy to answer any questions regarding this or any information in those materials also.
Yeah, I think that brings us to a good point, and everybody can look at the PowerPoint. I went through it, and I'll lead off with a question if there's a couple of them. Follow my lead here, I guess. I saw something that I did not see, that there's more, it was in one of the pie charts around the rural portion. I could find it in here, but it's like 72%. And I know our state has a lot of rural, and there's a definition around rural that sometimes can be a little loose. But is there a focus from your organization to serve rural?
Yes, the answer to that is yes. If it's not 72%, it's the overwhelming majority. We're predominantly in rural communities in Kansas, almost exclusively in Missouri, to the extent that we've got a footprint in Missouri. It just is it's a tailored to fit model that respects those communities, that local control. So I think, yes, we do have a commitment to rural Kansas, and that's where most of our programs and services exist.
And as I understand your program, the feeder mindset, really like to start in middle school, then build out the high school program, and then the after graduation care program as well. Is that, am I understanding your process somewhat correctly?
Yes, that's the concept of the feeder pattern. Ideally, we start in elementary school and follow those students through the continuum of their educational experience so we can stick with them through elementary school, middle school, high school. And then our presence on the campus of Pittsburgh State University and those other positions which I mentioned, those community support specialist and success coach positions, those are relatively new. Our bread and butter really is the student support coordinators, K through 12, although we are proud of that additional work that we now provide post-secondary and into early careers. But yeah, your concept of the feeder pattern is correct.
Well, I'll just keep asking questions here. So of the 114,000 for each program and then there's a match from local districts, or is that inclusive of the match? I'm guessing that is not inclusive of the match, since that equals the ask.
That's correct. These numbers do not include a match. Currently, districts pay a match, but these numbers would reflect would not reflect a match.
Okay. Is that, was there a reason for that change in strategy to where, or do you anticipate other schools saying, well, they don't pay a match and now we don't want to pay a match? Is any complications in that direction?
That's a good question. I would note that none of these districts which we're looking for this expansion support are new districts. They're districts where we currently already have a presence. So we believe it's the most efficient model for growth. Kelly, who is our Chief Program Officer behind me, shares those relationships with the districts. She might be able to speak more to the dynamics of that funding relationship with the districts and get more to the heart of the question.
Hi, I'm Kelly Stanford, the Chief Program Officer. All of the districts do currently pay a cost share, and as districts are dealing with their budgeting going into the next budget year, there's a lot of uncertainty in a lot of the communities and districts where we are working. I would expect that districts would pay a cost share similar to what they currently pay for the programs that are existing in their districts for the expansion programs. That's going to be a little bit determinant, depending on what's happening with their local budgets going into next school year. But that is our basic approach. And the reason for that is that we feel that investment on the part of the local school district, helps support buy-in to the program. And I will always say to anyone who asks me what we need for Sparkville to be successful is that the number one thing is for school leaders to really want to have the program in their schools and to understand what the program can do and what it doesn't do, and to really work closely with us to figure out the best ways to target and focus the resources that come with our program to meet the unique needs in their schools. And when we have that kind of relationship and that kind of buy-in, that's when we can realize the greatest potential of the work that we do.
Well, thank you for the work that you do, and seeing no other questions, I just thank you for your testimony, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Next is the name that I'm probably not going to say right, and is Kansas Action for Children, Adrian Oldnick. How did I do?
It's a great thing to be able to break the ice, of how to say my name. It's Olnick. You ignore the J.
Okay,
Yeah, good
it's
old
like mine,
Czech
just
name.
don't say the O. There you go, okay. I will remember that, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony on the KSDE budget. I'm Adrian Olnick, Vice President of Kansas Action for Children. And whenever we give budget testimony, I think it's helpful to just share a little bit about KAC. We are a nonprofit policy organization, so when we provide testimony about something in a budget, it's not for us. We're really looking at what do kids need and focusing there. We receive no local, state, or federal dollars. So just want to kind of clear the air on that. We don't get any of the money we're asking for. So I'm really here to just draw your attention to one key thing in the budget. And I know it can be a little complicated, so if you have questions, I'll do my best to answer those, but it's regarding a piece of the Children's Initiatives Fund. So I want to urge you to continue funding, in particular, the Kansas Preschool Pilot Program. Right now, in the KSDE budget, it is funded through the CIF. The CIF is funded through the Kansas Endowment for Youth Fund, which was created several decades ago to be the repository for the master tobacco settlement funds, and then those funds transfer mostly in part to the CIF to fund early childhood programs. But due to just the complications of how those funds are transferred over those decades, some sweeps to SGF, and ultimately declining settlement payments because of the master tobacco settlement dollars decreasing, which I think you've heard about in this committee, the Key Fund is now $10.6 million short of funding the programs it budgeted to fund in fiscal year 2027. So this puts several essential early childhood programs at risk. So the amount of money that we want you to consider in the KSD budget right now, they use $4.2 million of CIF to fund the Kansas Preschool Pilot Program. We ask instead that you shift this to SGF or an alternative funding stream. This simple change reduces pressure on the CIF while supporting a highly effective program. And just as a reminder, the Kansas Preschool Pilot Program provides high-quality preschool opportunities for children ages 3 to 5, especially those with risk factors that make kindergarten readiness more challenging. In fiscal year 2025 alone, the KPP served more than 4,000 children across the state, and over 95% of the participating preschoolers show growth in literacy, math, and life skills development. We recognize the tough choices you have ahead of you this year in needing to reduce expenses and keep a lot of budgets flat. And we think that early childhood is one of the areas to really consider the importance of the investment and to make the change this year. Again, we know the complications, but we ask you to prioritize this. So if you have any questions, I'm here to try to answer those.
Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any questions? We understand everything about the Key Fund. I don't think so.
You can help me then. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Next up, we have a much easier name to pronounce. We have Mike O'Neill with O'Neill Consulting. Welcome to committee, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike O'Neill, representing Kansas Policy Institute and their affiliate organization, the Kansas School Board Resource Center. Point of personal privilege, I serve on the JAG board, and so I'm here to tell you what I echo what our CEO has said. You all have a chance often to see the product of the work that Kansas Policy or that JAG-K does. I wish you could see them when they start and see how they've changed from when they started and having so many barriers that keeps them from being successful. And then you see the result of what the JAG-K program can do. So I'm very proud to be a part of that. It's no secret I'm here in the building every day. You know that KPI has been very involved in working on K-12 reforms. We've had a number of concerns over the years. We've had a lot of legislation that's aimed at trying to address some of the concerns we have about performance outcomes and that sort of thing. We do have an Exhibit A, which we do not have time to go through today, but as I mentioned, I'm in the building and happy to talk to any of you about some of the ideas we have. What I'm really here to do today is the message that you hear some suggestions that the only role that the legislature has is to fund, and nothing could be further from the truth. I've done extensive research on the case law, constitutional provisions, to determine what is contemplated by the Constitution and by Supreme Court decisions on the role of the legislature. And you have a great role to play, not only in the funding, but also in the development of policy. You've all heard Article 6, Section 1. Article 6 is the education article passed in '64 by the voters. And it says the legislature shall provide for the intellectual, educational, vocational, and scientific improvement by establishing and maintaining public schools and related activities which may be organized and changed as provided by law. And the changes, you will see if you look at the education chapter in the KSAs, since that chapter was first enacted, about 900 legislative enactments, which is an indication of just how much involvement the Kansas legislature has and how much is contemplated that the legislature will have. So going back to when the article was first enacted, the court case of Board of Education, the USD 443 versus Kansas State Board of Education, the court said the following: the new article, it was new at the time, gives constitutional status for the first time to an elected State Board of Education of 10 members, an appointed State Board of Regents of 9 members, and to local boards of education. At the same time, the amendment reaffirms the inherent powers of the legislature and through its members, the people, to shape the general course of public education and provide for its financing. Obviously, charting out the course and the policy of education is foremost. Funding, of course, is a part of it. The Kansas Supreme Court has weighed in on on the financing part. And the test for adequacy, according to the Gannon case, is that the amount should be in structure and in implementation reasonably calculated such that all children are able to reach the Rose Standard goals that are in statute. All children. In Gannon 4, the court was even more specific. It noted the high percentage, a disproportionate percentage of socioeconomically challenged kids and the minorities who were frankly being left behind. The money that was ordered was primarily intended to get to those students. And yet, after billions of dollars have been spent since there, we really aren't there. And in fact, in some ways, we've gone backwards in terms of performance outcomes. We have been, sadly, funding mediocrity for a number of years, and we would hope to see that change through the work of the Education Committee and the K-12 Committee and the Education Committee on the Senate side. In the case of Bricknell versus Board of Education, the court said the following: education is the title of Article 6 of our Constitution, which specifically delegates responsibility for all aspects of the subject to the legislature. You created the State Board of Education that has general supervisory powers. That has been interpreted to mean something more than to advise and something less than control. The key part of that constitutional provision is that the state board shall perform such other duties as may be provided by law. And when you see that anywhere as provided by law is the legislature under Article 2, Section 1. So our concern is about not asking for more money today, but asking you to make sure that the money is allocated in a way that meets the expectations of the Constitution for improvement and meets the expectations of the court that we're going to target that money in the correct way. So we need to look no further than the Kansas Department's own accounting handbook to learn what they feel about the importance of instruction. And I know you've probably heard this, I'm sounding like a broken record with these committees. They say, quote, although all other functions are important, this function, instruction, acts as the most important part of the education program, the very foundation on which everything else is built. If this function fails to perform at the needed level, the whole educational program is doomed to failure, regardless of how well all other functions perform. I can't think of a way that the department could have expressed that any more strongly. It cries out for a budgeting process that's built from the classroom up, not the administration building down. Now, in some respects, they're only talking about the USDs. I would suggest that the legislature's role should be similar in incentivizing budgets at the local level that focus on the classroom, that focus on instruction. In 2005, I was able to get an amendment into the budgeting bill during litigation that said, as a state policy goal, 65% of appropriated funds for K-12 should be expended for the classroom or instruction, to the extent that there's some difference between the two. Okay, that was in 2005. We're now 20 years hence. There wasn't, and that was signed into law by Governor Sebelius. In 20 years hence, there has not been a single year when that 65% state policy goal was met. In fact, it's been in the neighborhood of 52, 54%, and actually has declined. So let's think about that in terms of the cumulative effect of money that you appropriated that was intended to be used for instruction that got spent elsewhere. That number is north of $13 billion. That's what our classrooms have been deprived over the years. Now, you can have all sorts of arguments about, well, it was used for this and that all counts and that sort of thing. Remember what the handbook says. If this part doesn't get right, then all other aspects, all other ways you spend money are doomed to failure.
Mr. O'Neill, I just want to give you 30 seconds to wrap up. I gave you some extra time. Our
And that's-
last one didn't go
and that's basically what
as long.
that's what I wanted. I'll leave with this. You're going to hear a lot of percentages. This percentage of students, that percentage of students. Keep in mind that those percentages represent a finite number of students. Johnnies and Susies, they all have names. They all have goals and aspirations. And sometimes we just let the percentages kind of roll off our tongue and one ear and out the other. Those are all kids. And the court expected every single one of them through a system of financing to meet the goals and expectations. We're not there, and we need to get there.
Thank you for your testimony. I'll be fielding questions. First one goes to Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. O'Neill, for being here. I'm very glad that you brought up cumulative effect of not meeting various standards and expectations. On page 2 of your written testimony, you write, while it's true that funding must be adequate, the court and the governor have acknowledged that the schools have been constitutionally funded for many years, and it's really egregious to leave out the fact that special education funding has not been funded for 15 years. It has been since 2011 that we've met the state statute to fund excess special education costs at 92%. And the cumulative effect of that has been devastating. And I represent Johnson County, and we've gotten some numbers from Johnson County that I think really paint a picture of what that effect is on our schools over time. Johnson County schools are $60 million short in special education funding. And if you look at the difference between the constitutional funding of general education and the corrosive effects of 15 years of underfunding special ed, what we are looking at is a state base aid amount of about $5,378. When they have to transfer that $60 million, it is an effective reduction of the state base aid of $1,400 per student. That's 95,000 students, and that $1,400 makes the effective base state aid about $3,980.20. That is 26% below constitutional general education funding. And before we try to roll over and say, well, the feds didn't do this and the feds didn't do that, we're required to fund every single IEP, and the feds have said that they may contribute up to 40% of that cost. Our state
Representative,
statute...
it's great information, and I appreciate the information. Just want you to get to your
The
question.
question, gotcha. So that's, but I do want to make the point that our state statute says that we shall fund at 92%. We shall. It's not dependent on what the federal government does. So what I would like to know is what your stance is on using our consensus savings from the decline in enrollment to go ahead and fund special education to the fullest extent that we are possible without increasing the state budget.
Yeah, that's going to take, really, the ability to do that is in the hands of the local districts now, because we have an unprecedented amount of unencumbered balances that we're already sitting on. And I will, even though I was invited not to, the more egregious deficiency is what the federal government said that they would do, and they're not. So the legislature has had to kind of pick up the slack. So I totally take a look at special ed, take a look at things that are being spent. The $13 billion cumulative that we've lost to the classroom, that's money that could have been spent on special ed. There was nothing preventing the schools from using that money to make up a difference in order to get there. So anyway, that would be my answer.
Seeing no other questions, I got your email the other day, or someone from your group, and it did have that reserves number, the 1.3, and a question in my mind was, and special ed, you know, the 611 million in comparison to the roughly 5 billion is going to be different in reserves for districts and cooperatives and for special ed groups.
It's not evenly distributed, that's true.
Was inside of that total statewide reserves of the 1.33 billion, was special ed cooperatives inside of that for their reserve? Because we've talked about this and
I'd have to ask Dave about that, Mr. Trobert with KPI. I don't have the answer for that this afternoon, but
I'd love to know in your report, we can have another conversation, just because I know the timing of those payments for those sometimes affects that they do need to carry over a larger balance, but I'd be interested in the information and consider it as we make recommendations.
to you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no other questions, or Representative Poskin.
Just one question. The written testimony said that there was an attachment, and I don't think I saw that on the S drive.
I have mine printed, the Exhibit A part.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't think it made it to the S drive.
Okay, we'll get a copy for
Okay,
everybody
thank you.
on that, anybody who needs to check that, but we'll get Exhibit A.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Next up, we have Kansas Alliance for Boys and Girls Club, Joyce Glasscock. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Joyce Glasscock. I'm the Executive Director for the Kansas Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs, but I'm also here today not only for Boys and Girls Clubs, but the YMCAs, FFA, 4-H, and the ever-popular Jobs for America's Graduates, JK. You may realize that in 2025, the legislature approved a proviso in SB 125 under the budget for the Department of Education that directed KSDE provide $320,000 for this first-ever collaboration of nonprofit youth development organizations. The pilot would support youth at these organizations in grades 6 through 8 with hands-on career exploration experiences using immersive virtual reality technology. It also is part of a broader initiative for imparting essential career readiness skills and experiences for youth. The project was recommended initially as a 2-year pilot and intended to be scaled over time to engage more youth served by these organizations. The goals are to interest youth at an earlier age about jobs critical to Kansas's future, nurture skills and capacity of the future Kansas workforce, and contribute to the pipeline of workers here in Kansas. The state funding is incumbent upon a state to private 2-to-1 match. And the project began in earnest in September with the beginning of the school year. Since then, the 4 months, we've had several notable outputs that are included in your page 2 of your testimony. But included in that includes a cumulative number of about 1,200 views of career simulations by program participants, and about a third of those have been in healthcare. Research suggests middle school is when students can benefit most from career exploration, but is the area where the least funding is typically directed. 8th graders, however, do have to arrive at an individual plan of study that is intended to guide their high school coursework and eventual training and education. And that can be a very daunting undertaking, as you can imagine, as a 13 or 14-year-old. We seek your support for Year 2 level funding for FY 2027 from KSDE funds and have submitted language of the proviso for that purpose, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. My first question, and then I'll field some if we have some. The middle school focus. So I had the privilege of being a youth pastor for 10 years, and I think you're right on the money on those years are different than when they enter high school. And so just kind of is the organization solely focused on mostly trying to get activated in those middle school years to help that the following years, or what's the strategy for that?
Right, Mr. Chairman. We wanted to focus on that age in particular because we knew that in some areas of the state, and perhaps more maybe in rural or undersourced school districts, that age group may not get as much career readiness support as they might in better resource school districts. And what we found already is that student feedback suggests that they don't know exactly why they're doing this, which suggests to us that maybe you haven't become serious yet about this process. So the enthusiasm around the virtual reality technology draws them in, gets them excited, gets them interested, and helps them understand, I get it now. Let me lean in a little more. And in fact, through what we call transfer track, the process at the end of it allows a youth to, in fact, take the career interest surveys, get recommended on career simulations they might be interested in relative to those careers, understand the salaries or wages associated with those jobs. It recommends what high school coursework is important in order to be prepared for that kind of a career. Areas of particular interest could also include recommended certifications or trainings that they would need in order to come out of high school with a job like this. They basically can go through that path, set some goals, hit a button, hit print, and that document can go to their counselor, to their parents, to their teachers in order to follow them through high school for the purpose of staying on track.
Sounds like a great plan, and back to the youth ministry stuff, the goggles are kind of my version of provide pizza, and kids will show up, and then we'll try and help with whatever we can find, but there's a spot in there where there does need to be some enticement with something, wow, I didn't know this was possible, so thank you for your work and your creativity. Before we go to Representative Estes, how many staff, I know there's plenty of partnerships, so are those organizations, in a sense, kind of lending you a staff in that location for this outreach program? How is that little part working?
Right, so the staff are their staff. So for instance, at the Boys and Girls Club of Hutchinson, they have a staff whose lead on this, who also happens to be a 7th grade teacher. So she is making every 7th grader come through her program with the transfer track. Kids are loving it. They are knocking it out of the ballpark there. What we've also seen is that essentially, we train the 4-H staff and the YMCA staff, et cetera, and they will go back into their programs and they deliver it within the context of the career readiness programs that already exist. But what we realize is that all of our youth development organizations were not working together, we're not collaborating. And I even had a staff member mention to me that they didn't know what an individual plan of study was. They had no idea what it was, which said to me, you're working with middle school students and probably high school students, and you don't even have an eye toward that particular situation that these students are truly needing more support in. So that said a lot to me.
Well, thank you for the value that you're adding. Representative Estes.
Thank you, Joyce. I think you're filling in a gap that's needed, and I appreciate that. Are you able at all to track post-secondary success of students that you guys touch?
So with this program, is that what you're interested in? I've talked to Chuck Knapp of JAG-K because potentially of any of our programs, they probably have the best ability to continue to track students through. And he had expressed an interest in tracking his students who engage in this currently this year, this year JAG-K is in Russell and Hayes, and I believe they're moving out further west, Ford County. I think 4-H is going to go to Ford next year, but also, Wyandotte and Johnson. The idea being that, do we have a program that truly has a tremendous ability to track, and that is part of their model. I know a lot of times with some of our organizations, certainly in Boys and Girls Clubs, certainly in Manhattan, there is a lot of turnover in that population because of Fort Riley. And long-term tracking of students can be really difficult, especially when you're starting with a middle school program.
So I would love to encourage you to work with the department on that, because there is a national database that has to track that, but the department needs to know who's there. So I think they could help you solve your problem, and as a legislator, that would help me measure the effectiveness of the money that we give you. So I hope you guys have some conversations.
Well, and if you're referring to the department as KSDE, they have been incredibly supportive and helpful in this, and we've had several conversations with Dr. Harwood. Yeah.
Excellent. So hopefully you'll give him a list of students so we can calculate outcomes.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have one more question for you, Representative Brantley. Vice Chair Brantley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today. I am looking at the one-year pilot locations, and maybe you've said it, how do you choose those? Because I'm seeing active things that we have in my area, and I'm not seeing like 4-H on there.
So the organizations chose where they wanted to go, given the limited resources. So each organization at this point has 10 ocular headsets and licenses for that. With 4-H and FFA, they looked around and decided where do we have the strongest county agents or potentially education-related instructors who are very active and have done a lot in career readiness already. So 4-H chose where they wanted to go, FFA chose theirs, et cetera. And with Boys and Girls Clubs, we had a competitive RFP internally in order to put it in Hutch and Manhattan for year one.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you very much.
Make sure I've got the right next one on my list. Kansas Association of School Boards, Leah Fleiter. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Leah Fleiter. I'm the Assistant Executive Director of Advocacy for the Kansas Association of School Boards. We were established in 1917, and we represent 2,000 locally elected members of boards of education across the state of Kansas. You have my written testimony in front of you, and you've probably heard me say before that our testimony is always based on our member-adopted legislative policy platform. And so I'll just quickly go over the headings of that with you. I'm not going to read each of them. But you can see that our headings are financing schools, including adequate and equitable funding of public schools, public accountability for public funds, special education, academic preparation for post-secondary, and so those are the policy platforms that direct our testimony whenever we're in the State House, and in particular in support of the KSDE budget request. So I'd like to make some very broad statements, and then I can stand for questions at your discretion. We support the continuing inflationary adjustment for K-12 schools as litigated in the Gannon School Finance case. We support phasing in additional state aid for the separate special education funding formula to enable the state to fulfill its statutory commitment to fund 92% of excess costs, as has already been noted today. The new money that was added in 2024, that substantial addition of $75 million, was much appreciated, and it was a one-year down payment on a multi-year plan, but unfortunately, without substantial new money in fiscal year 27, that underfunding gap will be exacerbated. We also support the agency's request for $15.5 million to essentially recreate the Safe and Secure Schools grant program. And we also support the agency's request for reinstatement of the professional development and mentor-teacher programs and the national board certification programs to support our staff and ultimately our students. And then not in the KSDE budget, but in case there's a question regarding the governor's budget recommendation to add $2.2 million to SGF to cover co-pay costs for breakfast and lunch for low-income students. Our members know hungry kids can't learn. However, our districts are also acutely aware that at-risk funding, this committee knows as well, at-risk funding is allocated based on the number of students who qualify for free school meals. And so we would just urge that any discussion about this would involve the legislature considering adoption of additional or other means of determining how we allocate at-risk dollars instead of depending solely on free lunch. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
Representative Steele first, and then Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. I think this may be more of a question for Nick, but we have heard a lot of conferees today talk about this 92% of special education funding. I believe that statute states that that is subject to appropriations. So I just want clarification because we've had a lot of people mention 92% of special education. subject to appropriations. And we're missing those key words, subject to appropriations.
Nick, do you have a confirmation or comments on that?
I mean, that is correct. KSA 723422, after the excess cost formula, at the calculation of the 92%, it then states subject to appropriations. That amount is what school districts are otherwise entitled to.
Thank you very much, Nick. I just would like it noted that the legislature, this says 92% subject to appropriation. And so it's difficult, conferee after conferee, talking about special education funding, subject to appropriation, and those words are being left off of a very important bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to budget is a reflection of our priorities, and we decide how to appropriate our resources every year. So everything in our budget is subject to appropriation. But I did have a question for you, Leah. We've talked a lot about at-risk and education funding task force. Do you have other ideas of how other states have determined at-risk? I have not really heard a good alternative. And so I'd love to have your thoughts.
Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. I can give a pretty broad overview, and then I might need to defer to Mr. Willis or the revisor. But in the past, there have been discussions of using census tract data because that's a little more granular, I think. So, you know, it's true, other states use other measures. And so I don't want to get too deep into the weeds because I'm not a legislative researcher and I wasn't prepared for that very good question. A number of states do a number of different, use a number of different mechanisms. I believe this may have been addressed by post-audit several years ago. But again, that's as far as my knowledge base goes.
And we are having post-audit here tomorrow, so we'll have a chance to maybe re-ask that question and see what their suggestions were.
Thank you.
Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Leah, thank you for being here, as always. Under adequate and equitable funding of public schools, you talk about maintaining the structure and approach of the constitutional formula that we have now will provide critical stability, predictability, and continuity. And, you know, we know that that constitutional formula sunsets in 2027. This is 2026. We've known for a very long time that it's sunset in 2027. And as far as I know, we don't have plans in this committee to kick out a new formula by the end of this session. And I'm wondering if you are hearing from school districts across the state, if they're becoming concerned, how are they planning? How are they going to be stable, predictable, and have continuity if we don't even have a formula for them?
Mr. Chair, as far as I know, the communications I've had with them is they're watching it very closely because they are looking at how they're going to build their budgets in the upcoming years. They're very focused on kind of the framework of some of the broad topics that we need to have as far as flexibility and making sure that we account for various challenges that districts have. So I haven't gotten a lot of detailed questions yet about the formula because, you know, honestly, Representative, a lot, as those of us in the building are going to be shocked to hear this, but a lot of our rank and file day-to-day people are not super focused on the fact that this is January 26th, 27 of 26 and July 1st of 2027 is not very far away as far as legislative work, but they're kind of, I think a lot of them are focusing on the second semester and the snow days and budgeting for the upcoming year. So sorry I didn't have more detailed information.
Follow up, if I may.
One more, yeah.
Okay, it's a follow-up on the same subject. So if we don't pass a formula by the end of this session, is there a plan for school boards to, I'm sorry, I guess.
I haven't had that level of conversation with people.
Thank you so much.
Several members on the task force, even on this committee, are going to make sure we have something done. And, you know, the the ease of it is there, we could do something very simple, or if we, kind of like the goals of that task force are, what's the best thing for students? What's the best thing for teachers? Let's have those conversations and make those decisions. So appreciate the perspective. One last one. Classroom spending.
Yes.
Did you want your? Okay. Classroom spending was brought up, but
Yes.
Shannon and I have had a few conversations. You may have sat in on.
Yes.
What is KASB's position on and plan to help that happen? Is there recommendations on, here's how we do get more of the percentage of funds that are getting spent in our education system at that critical point of the education process for students?
We don't have that in our legislative policy. So, okay, just so make sure that I was answering the correct question. That has been, this 65% policy goal has been kicked around for quite a while. We always note when we're having discussions with lawmakers and others is that, the vast majority of a school district's budget goes to salaries, right? And so most of those salaries are people who are directly in contact with the classroom, whether it be a teacher, a paraprofessional, a custodian, even, a bus driver, because you got to get kids from home to the classroom, the librarian. So I think it's more a way of how classroom spending is sometimes represented or misrepresented. So we don't have policy in our legislative policy, but we have a lot of conversations on the amount of funding that goes to people and hence classrooms.
Okay, appreciate that response. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next, we have the Kansas Board of Regents, Elaine Frisbee. Give her some time to weave her way through. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Elaine Frisbee. I'm Vice President for Finance and Administration, and I believe you've been provided a handout on the CanEd broadband internet network and FCC audit findings. So I don't want to take very long. I know you have a lot of things on your plate today, but I know there have been some questions about this transfer that's been recurring over years. There's a table on this back side of the handout. There's been a cumulative transfer of about $1.1 million from our agency's fund to the Department of Education. And we have now reached a point where there is just simply not going to be any more money in that fund. So one key point I want to emphasize for you today is that there has been no new revenue into that fund since 2014. So as transfers have gone out and as we have used that fund for our IT operations, the fund is being depleted. So simply, we need those funds to make some expenses this year and for next year, and then it's going to be gone.
Our legislative research partner, Jennifer, she's prepped us on this one. If there's any questions directly from the source of that fund that we're going to need to make a decision on through this budget, now is your opportunity to ask the source. Representative McDonald.
We may have been told this and I may have forgotten, but what was the original source of revenue for that fund and why did it go away?
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Mr. Chair, Representative. So for a number of years, for about 15 years, we as an agency operated the CanEd network, and we received reimbursement from the Universal Service Administrative Co., USAC, which operated on behalf of the Federal Communications Commission, and those dollars are what generated this funding source for us. And then the legislature decided, technology has changed dramatically over time. That CanEd network wasn't needed. It was disbanded. And so those funds remained, and we've been spending them down.
That's helpful. Thank you.
All right. Not seeing any other questions. Thank you for coming and presenting it for us today. I think our last, and it's a pair, so I will introduce Chris Wilson, and then I will let him introduce T.I.? I love it. T.I. All right, T.I., T.I. Smith is going to go for Fastbridge. So welcome to committee.
And I know that I see some faces that I remember. My name is, Chair Getz, members, my name is T.I. Smith, and I am a National Academic Advisor with Renaissance. And I'm just here today to go over, give you guys a little bit of review on a product, an assessment piece that the Kansas schools have been using for the last 4 years, and that's Fastbridge. Fastbridge program is in its 4th year again here in Kansas, and it's being utilized by over 230 districts. That's over 315 or nearly 315,000 students, which represents about 70% of the Kansas public school population. So we've been doing this for a little while. It's important because Fastbridge is a way for us to have a valid, reliable, research-aligned tool that will allow your teachers to be able to monitor academic progress throughout the school year and adjust instruction. So a little bit different than your state test. If we can identify needs early, we can act quickly and provide a stronger trajectory toward grade level proficiency in the long term for school success. Fastbridge is time-saving, valid, reliable assessment system that will identify whether students demonstrate academic risk in reading and math, but it also pinpoints those specific skill areas that need attention. The assessment only takes 30 minutes on average, which means we're going to make sure that you can assess quickly, get your data quickly, and inform instruction quickly. We do this with 4 key principles. We're able to use it as an investigative tool so that we can see which of our students are at academic risk, whether it's your whole class or individual students, and identify that precise skill deficit. Then we're going to help educators intervene by using the data to guide those immediate steps for targeted intervention, acceleration, and for instructional guidance. Then we're going to be able to inspect over time. So we're going to monitor student progress. We're not only going to measure achievement, but we're going to measure growth. That allows us to work with some of those students who are below grade level or level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, to be able to say what we're going to do next. We're also going to make sure our data is accessible to all stakeholders. That includes your families and your guardians, and we're going to keep them informed of student progress and which is critical to our mission and helps strengthen our home and school partnership. We've been doing this for a little while, so we want that continued investment. That sustained partnership ensures consistent data, educator familiarity, and statewide alignment. Over the course of our partnership, we have collected 4 years of data on student progress. However, our work is not yet done. Continued investment will ensure Kansas educators maintain access to high-quality tools that guide instruction and support long-term academic achievement. So what I would like to say also is that as my job before I came to Renaissance as a special educator, I know the importance of data. If teachers are to plan and to design instruction that truly allows students to be academically successful, they must begin from an objective starting point. One that can only be provided by an objective, reliable data. Objective data allows for all stakeholders to look at a student's performance and agree on that student's academic progress. It is essential to ensure that classroom instruction is grounded in researched and backed by student data. And I understand that all states have a state test, and we use that for accountability, but it really functions as a post-mortem review. In essence, an autopsy of what has already occurred. And while we can use that to go back and say, these are some of the things we should do differently, but we don't get the same cohort of kids over and over again. So the adjustments that we make from a postmortem may or may not apply to the kids that are currently in front of you. So for that, we need to make sure that we are able to have valid and reliable tool that works throughout the school year and that allows for teachers to be accountable for providing rigorous, differentiated instruction before the state test. And when I say hold teachers accountable, I don't mean in a way that's negative. What I'm saying is that they should have something to reference back to, data, in order to provide that rigorous and differentiated instruction. FastBridge fulfills these needs by providing actionable data when instruction can still change those outcomes. Thank you for your guys' time, and I'm standing here for any questions that you might have.
Questions do we have? Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate this. We had a fascinating discussion earlier. One of the things we had talked about was instruction and follow-up, correct? And the issue of electronic devices and how it can impact. I wonder if you could call up your colleague here, Mr. Colton Gibson, who has been on his cell phone for the last part of your presentation, so I could ask him a question. No, please come forward, Mr. Gibson. As a former...
Gladly bring Mr. Colton to the principal's office.
As a former student at Basehor Linwood High School, you might remember the reward principle that we used in classroom, answer questions. Could you tell me one key element of this testing program that is so critical to us? And you can come get your candy.
He can't cross the sacred line. You're going to have to take it to him.
Thank you, Mr.
Oh.
I don't want to get him in trouble like you do.
Okay, then you may be seated.
I'd still like to answer your question. Is that okay?
I would like to hear this.
Mr. Chair, thank you. One thing that I think stands out is, we all talk about in this room and members of this committee, we all talk about where are the kids at and how are we measuring that progress. FastBridge as a tool to measure that progress is really, honestly, one of the best tools that the state has in its tool chest. So,
thank you very much. And I just want to say I've had a wonderful chance to go over some things on early education and support for that 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old testing that we're hearing about, and her techniques and her suggestions. We need to really look at this as an important project. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This one's for Colton again, I believe. I don't have a reward. You're just out of luck. Refresh my memory from last year's budget. How did you all get funded for this year?
So funding for FastBridge in the last kind of 2-3 years, it's been funded out of ESSER dollars. And that's been, so the state's covered half and the school districts have covered the other half with skin in the game. Moving forward, we're hoping that KSDE will be able to find additional dollars to keep this program funded.
So it's, in a sense, not in our budget right now, but it's built in.
Correct.
Frank might be just now hearing that he has a budget request. I don't know. All right. Well, thank you. Any other questions? Well, it was nice to listen to you in education, and it was great to listen to you in here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, members.
With that, any other oral testimony? I had you on my list, but I didn't have you on my list. I saw you out there, but maybe something got missed. But Timothy Graham, Kansas NEA.
So which list am I on?
You're in red right now, so.
All right, I am standing in the way of your dismissal, so I will be as quick as I can. Tim Graham, KNEA, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to weigh in on the budget. There's 4 things that we'd really like to touch on real quick, and you've already heard them, and you've heard them from us many times. But we would like to ask the legislature to remain on course to meet the constitutional funding requirements as stipulated by the former Grannon ruling. As part of that framework, the court made it clear that maintaining adequacy requires the state to account for inflationary cost increase, the CPI, including those adjustments tied to the changes to the CPI would be something that we would like to see in the bill. The other thing we'd like to say, and this is just a repeat of what we always say, we would ask that the legislature once again commit itself to reaching 92% reimbursement of the excess cost for special education. I understand I understand the point that Representative Steele made earlier, and to answer her question up front, I understand it is subject to appropriation, so we're asking you to make that appropriation. The other thing we'd like to talk about is the Teacher Mentor Program. As all of you know, that funding the Teacher Mentor Program outside of the formula took place last year, and let me restate that. Funding the Teacher Mentor Program was stripped from the budget last year. You remember before last year, it was funded outside of the formula. KNEA asked that the legislature reinstate this line item funding outside of the formula again, and we would ask that you adopt the KSDE enhancement request of $1.3 million. That would be well received within the education community, and that would help strengthen the support and retention of early career educators. And then the last thing, again, closely related to the Teacher Mentor Program, we would like to have the funding for the professional development that was, again, taken out of as one of the extras in last year's budget. And we'd ask that that line item funding be reinstated, again, outside of the formula, and the KSDE enhancement request of $1.77 million to support those professional development opportunities would be another positive investment, and we would support, or we would ask you to make that change. Thank you again for this opportunity, and again, sorry that I'm standing in the way of the bell.
No, you're not. We have 7 more minutes. Representative Brantley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here today with your testimony. Can you clarify something for me? You're KNEA, right? What's the relationship with NEA?
We are a state affiliate of NEA.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And if we missed your emailed in submitted testimony, great, but if you want to provide it to us, I can distribute it out, and we'll make that up. May not be in the official documents, but it'll be in the hearts and minds of the committee. So
I misunderstood you when you asked me to be here today. We'll talk about it offline, but
okay.
I was prepared to come and talk. I didn't realize you wanted the testimony beforehand. So I've only been here 30 years.
There's rules to this place that I'm still learning as well, but I had to do it a certain way. So anyway, I appreciate your testimony. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your testimony and hanging around and listening to this. Appreciate all of the things you add to our education climate in our state, and genuinely mean that, and want to continue to be good partners. Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to give a huge shout out to Rose. She processed over 100 pieces of testimony that were due 48 hours before, but she allowed it to come in 24 hours before. And I just wondered if we had a summary of how many of our Kansas constituents, when they understand the erosion of 26% of constitutional funding, submitted testimony asking for fully funding for special ed. Do you think it's 100, 200, including our emails? Fully funding.
And those
Thank you for your Herculean effort to let us hear those voices.
Thank her. We'll not ask questions of her, but it was my last bullet point on the agenda, was to highlight all of the written testimony in your S drive, and You can count them. There is a lot of them. And there was a lot that came in even after the cutoff time that we pushed back. So just everyone listening online, thank you for sending those thoughts and concerns, and they are under consideration. Tomorrow, we will listen to legislative post-audit and the Inspector General, and then on Thursday, we will start discussions. I don't, right now, I'm not looking to make decisions on Thursday. We're gonna have 2 days to do that. We may make some, but most of it will happen on Monday. I like to give the weekend after we think everything and talk everything through this week, and then this next coming Monday will be our recommendations for K-12 budget. So thank you all for helping us do that with your testimony, and thank you, committee, for your questions, and we are adjourned.